Caves are said to claim the lives of roughly 3 explorers per year. It can be incredibly dangerous. There's a risk of hyperthermia, rockfall, drowning, exhaustion, unsafe air. So just be careful. Make sure you're using every safety measure possible if you do decide to go on a spelunking trip. Anyone here with any scary cave stories? Please share in the comments. I'm your host James, and these are the top 10 mysterious disappearances that happened inside caves. And we're starting off this list with Kenny Veach. Kenny Veach was an experienced hiker and explorer who went missing in 2014 while searching for a peculiar cave in the Nevada desert. Kenny shared in a YouTube comment that he had encountered a mysterious M-shaped cave near the Nellis Air Force Base around Area 51, which had apparently caused his body to vibrate. Encouraged by other commenters, he filmed his exploration of the cave and uploaded it to his YouTube channel, Snakebite McGee, titling it M Cave Hike. Unfortunately though, on his third attempt to reach the cave, a few months later, he vanished without a trace. His cell phone was discovered near the entrance of an old mine shaft, yet his whereabouts are still unknown. It's possible he got lost or had an accident, but the cave's proximity to Area 51 and Kenny's claims of odd vibrations led to a lot of online rumors and theories. Some speculated he might have stumbled upon significant information related to extraterrestrials or government secrets, and that his pursuit was intentionally disrupted. Despite extensive searches though, there's still no solid evidence or leads as to where he is. Next we have Ben McDaniel. Ben McDaniel disappeared in August of 2010 while exploring Vortex Spring in Florida. He dove down to explore an underwater cave roughly 58 feet below the surface. He resurfaced. It was totally fine. He refilled his tanks in preparation for a second dive later in the evening. But this time, he never returned. His truck was left behind at a dive shop. Inside it were his wallet, a cell phone, and a map of the cave. There were also 2 oxygen tanks found near the entrance of the cave. And the 2 divers who discovered them found it odd that there was just air in the tanks rather than having a mix of gas, which is typically the case when deep diving. The cave is known for being tricky to navigate with tight spaces and poor visibility, and despite a thorough search by experienced divers, he was never found. Some think he might have run into problems, maybe he got stuck or had issues with his gear, but no one knows for sure. And some even suggest he purposely disappeared or maybe faked his own vanishing, which is quite the reach, but there's still no concrete answers till this day. Next on the list is Michael Leland Vincent. Vincent went missing in Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky on May 5th, 2011. At the time, he was on parole and he had just set fire to his house, which he shared with his mother and aunt. Some speculated that he had attempted to burn down his house in order to fake his own death so that he could escape the consequences of his charges. Some say he may have taken his own life, but no body has ever been discovered. He lived very close to Mammoth Cave though, which is huge. In fact, it's the largest known cave system in the world. So if he did go missing in that cave, it's likely he'll never be found. Next we have Peter Verhulsel. Peter was exploring the Sterkfontein caves in South Africa with some friends in 1984. He had veered off the line strung through the cave, which was used to help them find their way back out. Scuba divers were sent in to try and locate him, but days, then weeks went by before his body was finally discovered, at which point it was too late. Peter was unable to find his way back to his friends, but had managed to find a small underground beach where he pulled himself out of the water. It was pitch black in there, and his oxygen tank was just about depleted, so he was completely trapped. In this multi-week long search, rescue teams would have been within 36 meters of him, but Peter didn't hear them, and the rescuers believed that he had drowned. When Peter was finally found 6 weeks after having gone missing, it was determined that he had died of starvation. Floyd Collins. Floyd Collins met his unfortunate fate in Crystal Cave in Kentucky, a cave which he had actually discovered and had been mapping out and exploring for 8 whole years. On January 30th, 1925, while exploring the cave, Collins became trapped in a narrow passage about 150 feet away from the entrance. He had been working on creating an entrance to a grotto he had discovered down there when his gas lamp started to dim. Now, He was in a rush to make his way back out of the cave, and he accidentally knocked over his lamp, igniting it completely, or opposite of igniting it, he put it out completely, and his foot landed on an unstable part of the wall. Rocks started to shift, and one of them fell from the ceiling, pinning his leg. A rescue effort was, of course, launched, but Floyd was deep in the cave, and the difficult conditions made a rescue kind of tough to execute. Despite the attempts of rescuers, Collins remained trapped for over 2 weeks. Tragically, on February 13th, Collins finally died of exposure, hunger, possibly hypothermia. This was most likely the day he died, but his body wasn't actually retrieved until the 16th. Next up is the Talu Cave incident. In 2007, Helena Carroll and her fiance John Cullen were exploring Talu Cave in Thailand along with 7 other tourists. Things took a turn for the worse though, when a flash flood broke out. This giant wave gushed into the cave and swept away everyone except for Helena and John, who just started climbing in order to escape this rising water. They reached a ledge and debated what they were going to do next. John ultimately decided he was going to attempt to swim to safety and send back help. He did not survive, and Carol was found and rescued hours later. She was the only survivor. Number 4, we have what I like to call a close call. This was a story posted to Reddit by a now deleted user, but the story goes that they were exploring a cave with their family. As they were making their way out, they discovered a narrow opening in the rock, about knee high. By lying on their stomachs and squeezing through the tight space, they entered a small crawl space within the rock. The ceiling of this space was adorned with beautiful quartz crystals. Moving in one by one, the group stared up at this beautiful sight before them. The space was so tight, though, that they could feel the ceiling against their backs and the floor against their stomachs with each breath. They continued deeper though until the path led to an area covered in sediment formations like stalagmites and stalactites. Everyone thought this was pretty cool, but they began to feel water trickling onto their backs. They realized that it was raining outside, and the crawl space had a downward slope that would quickly fill with rainwater. The only way to escape was the way back they'd come in, and what started as a small trickle of water pretty quickly grew into streams, and the water began to accumulate. They rushed to exit, crawling out one by one, but the water was flooding in faster than they could escape, and the user who was furthest from the exit was trying very hard not to panic. They had the worst time here, crawling on their stomach with sharp crystals hanging from the ceiling again, and they struggled to keep up. The water level rose rapidly, splashing against them as they crawled, and just in time though, they managed to crawl out as the water had reached their lips at this point, and everyone managed to get out safely. Ugh, I feel uncomfortable just reading that. Number 3, we have the Catacombs video. Now, while the Paris Catacombs isn't technically a cave, it is cavernous and dark and incredibly easy to get lost in. This is one of the most infamous pieces of found footage on the internet, as we still don't know who this person was. If you somehow have not heard about this case before, it's a POV video of a person exploring the catacombs. The camera with the footage was found later on by a group of explorers. Most of the video is pretty mundane until you start to notice that the person behind the camera seems to be getting increasingly more distressed. He starts to pick up his pace, pointing the camera around in a frantic manner as if realizing he's lost and is starting to panic. Then he's in a full-on run. The video ends with the cameraman finally dropping the camera and just running deeper into the shadowy depths of the maze of catacombs as the camera continues to film before finally running out of battery. John Edward Jones. In 2009, John Edward Jones went missing in Nutty Putty Cave, Utah. John was exploring the cave with his brother when he got stuck upside down in an uncharted narrow passage which he had mistaken for a section called the Birth Canal Passageway. Despite efforts to free him, John remained trapped in the tight space. Rescuers worked tirelessly to try and retrieve him, but in the end, they were unable to save his life. The challenging conditions of the cave made it extremely difficult. The passage was only about 10 inches wide in some places, and it was positioned at a steep angle. The rescue operation involved pulleys, ropes, and other equipment to try and free John. They even brought in specialized teams from around the country to help, but unfortunately, after nearly 28 hours of being trapped in this upside-down compressed position, John suffered cardiac arrest. Because of the dangerous conditions and the risk to the rescuers, it was decided the best course of action was to just close off the entrance to the cave, sealing it with concrete to prevent further access. And finally, we have the rescue. I thought I'd finish off the video with an uplifting story for once. Let's leave things on a good note. Uploaded in 2016 to the YouTube channel Exploring with Josh, the group of friends were exploring Ape Cave in Mount St. Helens, Oregon, when they made a pretty shocking discovery. At the start of the trek, the cave is very spacious, but pretty soon the group were on their hands and knees as they had moved further and further into the cave. It was becoming increasingly more low and narrow, and one of the guys suggested they just turn back, saying, "I don't think this is worth it, man. I don't think we're meant to crawl this far," but they continued on, and it's lucky that they did, because they came across a young girl who had got lost in the cave somehow. She didn't have anything on her, no light, nothing, but she'd managed to crawl in that far. The boys were able to bring her back to safety, where she was reunited with her parents. Luckily, she hadn't been in there very long. If they hadn't decided to explore the cave that day, who knows if she ever would have been found. With all that said though, I've been your host James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.